It has been a crazy week for MCU and Spider-Man news, with the deal falling out between Sony and Disney, but it's looking now like we might have a new deal that Disney has offered. Now it's just up to Sony to accept it. So I just have to point out, obviously, all this is rumors. Now, there are sources who claim they have this inside info, but take all this with a grain of salt so you don't get too excited. But I mean, it seems a pretty legitimate deal. Whether Sony takes it or not, if it's real anyways, we have no idea. But it is interesting to look into the deal and what Sony and Marvel would each get. So I'm going to break that all down in this video. And even if this is a real deal and Sony doesn't accept it, make sure to check out my most recent video where I describe everything great about what could come from a Spider-Man universe in the Sony system there without Marvel or Kevin Feige involved at all. So check that out and let me get started with the new deal. So according to this new deal, Disney wants a lot of things really, but the first and biggest thing is they want a 6-picture deal with Tom Holland with an option for a 7th. Now this does not mean 6 solo Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. This just means like the deal before where I think it was 5 movies. If he's in 2 Avengers movies, 2 of his movies, and Civil War, that's 5 movies. So that's the pictures there. So clearly they're planning on having more crossover movies and Avengers movies in the future, and we'll get to that later on. There's a lot of interesting details about that. But 6 pictures is a lot of movies now. They're bumping it up with an option for a 7th, so they want to pretty much add on 2 more movies in the original deal, which could possibly be something that's pushing Sony away. Now, in these 6 pictures, or 7, there are 3 more Spider-Man films after Spider-Man 3, which will be a new trilogy, is what the reports say. The second trilogy will focus on Peter Parker's college years, including plans for Peter to meet up and team up with Firestar and Iceman of the X-Men, which is something that happened in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon. Really old, but it is something that happened once before. And then what would happen is the other 3 movies would be 2 Avengers films in which Spider-Man will have a larger role and reportedly become friends with Johnny Storm, who is the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, if you did not know his real name. So there's a ton more info in this, but that right away is huge. If this is true, it gives us a little bit of a preview of what the plan is for the MCU and X-Men and future Avengers films, and just how big of a role they want Spider-Man to be, because a whole nother trilogy after what would be the 3rd Spider-Man film, that would be the longest running series for a single character in the MCU without a doubt, unless Thor keeps on going after Thor 4. Next, we get into a little bit more of the money side of things. So the original deal was 50-50 Disney and Sony, but Disney had 100% of the merchandising profits, so that fell through. Now, this new deal, Marvel Studios will helm and co-finance all Spider-Man related movies for 30% of the full profits, and they, like I said, previously wanted 50, but Sony said no, so now 30%, 20% drop off. Like I said, they still own 100% of the merchandise, which often makes more than the movies, but it is a little bit more fair. If this deal ends up going through, I could see this getting dropped down to the 15 to 20% range, but 30 is closer to the right direction. So Sony would still be the studio behind it, and the Blu-rays and the film, they would distribute this film, but Disney will acquire exclusive digital and online rights for Disney Plus and affiliated TV networks. So this probably means only Disney Plus, but it would prevent it from coming up on Netflix or anything else, because even though it's coming out from Sony, Disney would have complete control of its streaming status online. Now, another interesting part is that it says Marvel Studios would helm and co-finance Spiderverse live-action spin-offs under the same terms. So, same profit split up. They'd keep the rights to all the digital streaming and everything. For spin-offs, we know Sony was planning on doing Black Cat, Silver Sable movies. They have a Venom already. They have these spin-offs. There's rumors about Norman Osborn, Kraven the Hunter. They were planning on a lot of these spin-offs, so now they would be working with this, and they would be in the MCU, these spin-offs, with the same profit split up. Now we get into the biggest thing, which I think is the sole thing preventing this deal from going through. Unless Disney goes down to like 10% or lower, maybe back to the 5, and then just get all these new characters and rights. Because this next point is Venom would relocate into the MCU. Now, I don't know what Disney's thinking here. Venom made almost $1 billion on its own at the box office. First movie. Made pretty much, I think it was almost more, a little bit less, but almost the same as Spider-Man Homecoming. With no Spider-Man in a Venom movie, which is absolutely insane. And I think that Sony will give you all these other spin-offs plus Venom. Just the spin-offs on their own that they haven't made for different characters, I could see, but Venom with 30%, I don't see this deal getting accepted at all. Sony does get some stuff though, because it says Sony will be given permission for TV live action programs based on the Spiderverse properties. So Sony only has film rights to Spider-Man right now, but they would still need the permission from Disney for TV shows. So this deal, if it went through, would give Sony those rights. So they could make some spin-offs with the TV show tier, but Sony doesn't have their own streaming platform or anything yet. At least maybe they will. But I don't know if this is that big of a sweetener for Sony. I mean, they could put it out on different channels, obviously, but I really don't think Sony cares about that as much as they care about the film. So it's pretty clear with this new deal that Disney wants to completely take over Netflix and dominate the streaming world, because they're a company, Sony's a company. They both have to make money. They have shareholders. They have to make their shareholders and investors happy. And Disney is just trying to take over everything. But if they can get these new movies and make sure they're only on their platform, that is huge for them. So I see why that's one of the biggest points in here. Like I said, if they want the exclusive rights to have these shows only be on Disney Plus when they're out of theaters, and 30% with Venom and all these other spin-off characters for everything, like every Spider-Verse character that Sony owns, they want, which Sony owns a lot of those characters. I'm going to be clear, they want them for the movies. Sony can have them for TV shows, but still, Disney wanting those for the movies and 30% I think is too much for Sony to accept this deal. I think if a deal goes through, Venom's not going to come through. That's guaranteed, unless Disney goes back down to their 5% and just accepts Venom and Spider-Man for almost no more profit. But they will be making more money because they'll have Venom, who, like I said, almost made $1 billion on his own. If he was in the MCU with Spider-Man, that movie would break records. One more thing that's important here is it has been coming out in the past few days that Kevin Feige apparently did help with Venom and producing. He just did not get a producer credit on the movie, but he was involved with Venom. So maybe his plan has been all along, he wants to get Venom, not even maybe. He's even said, I think, he wants Venom in the MCU. And why wouldn't you? It's one of the most iconic, it is actually the most iconic Spider-Man villain. And even Tom Holland has said that he would love to work with Venom in the MCU on his own.
If we ever got to the chance to make a Venom movie together, that would be super cool. But his movie would have to take place in the MCU because I'm not giving up my ticket.
But we have no idea where this is going now. Like I said, Venom, I think, is going to be the huge part of this deal. Now, there's one thing that's making people think that this deal has actually went through already, and it just has not came to the public yet. So these two things revolve around Tom Holland, and this is why people think this deal has already been accepted behind the scenes, just hasn't became public yet. First thing is, I'll put it up on screen, Tom Holland posted pictures with Robert Downey Jr. saying, "We did it, Mr. Stark." Obviously, you could just be quoting the movie and posting a picture because he was with Robert Downey Jr., but they were all holding up Iron Man figures, and it does seem like he's saying we did it after all this deal stuff came through, like maybe a deal came true, and he's posting with Robert Downey Jr., who's obviously from the MCU. So it does seem like the deal came through with the MCU from that post, but could it be unrelated? We don't know. And the second thing is Tom Holland at D23 just said, "Listen, it's been a crazy week, but I want you to know I am grateful from the bottom of my heart and I love you 3000. Now, you might think this tells us absolutely nothing, and I did too, but if you think about it, he did use another MCU quote. Now, I know he was in the MCU movies, just like the picture, but he's just saying stuff about the MCU with all this coming out. He did unfollow Sony on Instagram, which I don't think that's huge. It could be someone that has control over his account, a marketing person or something. I'm not worried about that. But these two things he's had and posted about have directly correlated to the MCU with all this news about him leaving the MCU. So I think that's him trying to tell us that something's going to happen or something did happen and he's going to stay in the MCU. So if this goes through and there are 6 or 7 new movies in the MCU with Spider-Man, with a whole new trilogy, which would be 4 more solo Spider-Man movies, let me know what villains you want to see appear in that. Because if this deal that is reported went through, they would have all the villains that Sony owns, which is basically every iconic Spider-Man villain. And like I said, check out my other Spider-Man videos I've been uploading this week. If anything becomes official, I will update you guys instantly. So make sure to subscribe for more. Trying to hit 200, and I'll see you guys in the next one.